Good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the event, Gender Transformative Business Models, Opportunity to Action, hosted by IDH, the Sustainable Trade Initiative, and CGAP. I am Daan Wensing, CEO of IDH. I would now like to introduce Her Majesty Queen Máxima of the Netherlands in her capacity as the United Nations Secretary General's Special Advocate for Inclusive Finance for Development, to provide keynote remarks. As Special Advocate, she is a leading global voice on advancing universal access to and the responsible usage of affordable, effective and safe financial services. Queen Máxima raises awareness, serves as a convener, and encourages leaders to take action to expand financial inclusion at a global and country level, in close collaboration with partners from the public and private sector. Thank you, Your Majesty. The floor is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to be here. Thank you to IDH and CGAP for organizing this event and for the commitment to gender equity in the agricultural and food sector. Throughout my travels as a United Nations Secretary General Special Advocate for Inclusive Finance for Development, I have seen firsthand the essential role women play across food systems. Rural women are caretakers feeding their families. They provide labor on farms. They are agricultural entrepreneurs and are often innovators exploring new techniques and business models. Without women, no food security and no sustainable development. I see this everywhere, but especially in developing countries. In these countries, 8 out of 10 economically active women report that their primary activity is agriculture. It is impossible to reflect on the business of agriculture without putting the contribution of rural women center stage. This is particularly important as we take stock of where we are today. The pandemic has placed enormous pressure on society's most vulnerable people. Women in agricultural livelihoods have suffered excessively. Millions of women and their families are facing income loss and financial stress. COVID-19 has also posed huge challenges for businesses like yourselves. Supply chains are interrupted. Markets are less accessible. No-performing loans are rising, and the list goes on. Add to this climate change. In low-income countries, 25% of crops grown by smallholder farmers are projected to fail because of climate change. We can easily imagine the devastating effects on health, nutrition, education, and sustainable development. While this outlook is difficult, today's event is about seizing opportunities for the future. Our key mission is to better integrate women into business models in the food and agricultural sector. Our goal is to build resilience and improve business performance, benefiting us all. Gender equity is a fundamental source of value creation for companies. This is abundantly supported by data. For example, ILO found out that 6 out of 10 enterprises in the agricultural sector report that gender diverse policies have contributed to increased profits and productivity. These policies include investment in skills and capabilities, mentorship, and maternity leave. A study on listed European companies found that more women at senior level resulted in stronger share price performance, outperforming competitors on average by 2.5% per year. When women are active players in supply chains and trained appropriately, markets become more productive. Uganda's #1 coffee exporter, Kyagalani, found that investments in skills of women are very lucrative indeed. Involving them in training programs led to a 60% increase in yields over 5 to 8 years. It is estimated that bridging gender gaps could increase total agricultural output in developing countries by approximately 3%, It means feeding an additional 100 to 150 million people more. This underlines the tremendous importance of economic inclusion of women. While gender transformation in the agricultural sector presents significant opportunities, it is not an easy task. After all, how can we reach these women? They are less likely to own land and have less access to labor, technology, and finance. And social norms that shape women's lives can be constraining and slow to change. So, what does it take to make this transformation a reality? I would like to point out 3 areas of action. First, build a business case for gender equity. What gets measured counts. So gender-specific data are key to building the business case and measuring performance. Knowing how many women are active in your value chains, both formally and informally, is an important baseline. What are your current yields? What increases do you want to achieve? And how can gender inclusion investments help you get there? Making all of these calculations will show how gender transformation can add real value to your bottom line. Second, develop a gender transformation strategy. Change starts at home, in your organizations and in your companies. A strategy can act as an internal driver of gender inclusion and diversity. Strategies can help prioritize financial and technical resources. And most importantly, they keep our eyes on the ball, identifying targets and intended results. Third, very important, scale up that access to finance. Rural women represent 56% of the globally unbanked. While we expect them to sustain the global food system, they must very often do without quality savings, insurance, and credit. One of the many inspiring examples of how this issue can be tackled comes from Mali. Supported by IDH, female smallholders onion farmers got the opportunity to join village savings and loan associations. These associations also provided them with access to literacy training. As a result, yields from these farmers increased by 30%. And greater yields means more income to diversify meals, which over time means healthier workers. Digital payments and credit solutions can give businesses an extra boost, provided they're introduced responsibly with appropriate consumer and data protection. In conclusion, it is vital that we provide rural women with the financial tools and skills that enable them to uphold their indispensable role in the global food system. Today's events offers an excellent opportunity to take further steps in that direction. I really urge companies to accelerate investments in gender transformation. I also call on you to join forces and to search for scalability across markets. The time for action is now. This affects us all. Rural women contribute substantially to the $5 trillion global industry of food and agribusiness. It is high time we acknowledge their efforts and potential and support them where we can. These investments will boost your company's competitive edge and improve the lives of millions of rural women. Thank you very much.
Us today, and also thank you for raising the bar in terms of the ambition that we all should have in this event moving forward. So thank you once more. And I would now like to hand the floor to Stephen Rasmussen, who is the interim CEO of CGAP. And I would now offer him the floor to address us all with his welcoming words. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Daan. As Daan mentioned, I'm Stephen Rasmussen. I'm the interim CEO of CGAP. We're a think tank on financial inclusion that's housed at the World Bank. And we work on how to make financial services meet the needs of poor people. The conversation today is about how gender transformative approaches can be good for business. in addition to adding value to women's lives and livelihoods. The dialogue is designed to engage and inspire business leaders, as well as build allies and momentum for change. CGAP is delighted to partner with IDH to convene this important conversation. And I also want to have a recognize that there are other partners that we're collaborating with: AGRA, AgriFin, FinEquity, the GSMA, ICRW Advisors, IFC, UNCDF, and WSBI. So we have quite a group of core partners in this work. The opening remarks of Her Majesty Queen Máxima resonate deeply with us at CGAP. In CGAP's work to advance financial inclusion, customer centricity has long been a part of an important focus for us. And we're committed to putting a gender lens on everything we do. Embedding gender transformative aspects within business models takes that commitment further for us. I also want to, I'm looking forward to hearing from the business leaders who joined us today. We have people from across the value chain, everything from small to medium agriculture enterprises to global retailers, input providers, farmer cooperatives, financial service providers, and mobile network operators. It's quite a group. We also have people from outside the agriculture sector who might bring fresh perspectives from other sectors that have faced similar challenges and may be further ahead on this journey, this gender transformative journey. There's a lot to learn from each other on how gender transformative approaches can advance business goals, as Her Majesty said. And the business case is there, but it can still be challenging. We need leadership, we need staff buy-in, we need upfront investments to drive these approaches, we need the robust data that's there. And I look forward to hearing about experiences today and solutions that we can look forward to scaling up. Again, thank you, Daan, for this introduction, and I hand it back to you.
Thank you, Stephen, and it's a real pleasure to be co-hosting this event together. Our teams have been working for many years together, and I think this is, again, pushing a partnership, and that of all our partners also online today, to the next level. So thanks again for that partnership. And just on behalf of IDH Sustainable Trade Initiative, I would like to share also a bit of our perspective on gender transformative business models. As an international organization that is created and still has a core mandate to bring the private sector to deliver on the Sustainable Development Goals, gender is a crucial part of it. And we are very much supported to gender equality and to transform business models. And I think also in these days with COVID-19, with the results coming out of the Glasgow Climate Convention and all the other challenges, I think it is really important that we transform business models, that they become inclusive, and that we all realize that they make business sense next to the very important human rights principle that underpins it all. And today is also, and also the next days are all about the how. How will we do this? How will we get, as Her Majesty said, how will we get things to scale? I think that will be our challenge for the next couple of days. And we look very much forward to working with you, to learn from you, to listen to you, and see how we move this forward. And with that, I would now like to hand over to Anne-Marie, who is joining us from Kenya. Anne-Marie is the CEO of FSD Africa Investments. Hi, Anne-Marie, good to see you. So FSD Africa Investment is a private equity fund manager investing in women-led business. And Anne-Marie brings a wealth of experience into this room because she has been really building African financial markets with the track record, amongst others, with the World Bank and other financial institutions. So Anne-Marie, over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Dan, for the warm welcome. This is definitely a topic that I live and breathe, both on a personal level, but certainly professionally during the course of my career. So I'm currently now the Chief Investment Officer, as Daan Wensing mentioned, of FSD Africa Investments, which is part of the FSD Africa Group. And we're funded by the UK government, UK aid. And our goal is to foster change in financial markets. So there's better flow of capital to the real economy, to women, and also to green investments. I'd like to welcome all of you to this session on gender transformative business models and advancing opportunity for action. And first, I'd like to thank Her Excellency Queen Máxima for her very inspiring words to set the scene and to set the challenge that is ahead of us. And to Stephen and Dan from CGAP and IDH for outlining what is at stake. And to all of the sponsors who have made this event possible. Without the gathering of influential organizations like yours, this topic can get lost. I'm also excited to have such a range of expertise in the group here today. I wish I could meet you all in person. But let me invite you to take a moment to look at the rules of engagement. There is a link on the Zoom chat. We want to get out as much as possible from this conversation. So we do invite you just to click on the link on Zoom chat that gives you some guidance on that. I also just want to say that this is a candid and open conversation. Without a candid and open conversation, we just cannot make further advancement on this very, very important topic. And we continue to lose value that women represent in our economies. So please, let's be open and let's be honest and let's be candid. Our session will be held under Chatham House rules. So participants are free to use the information received, but neither the identity nor the affiliation of the speaker nor that of any other participant may be revealed. So let's get started. I think for those of you who are working in this space and interested in this topic, can testify that there is growing evidence that gender transformative approaches correlate with better financial performance, where women become center as customers, as employers, as business partners, as business founders, as investors. In fact, women are commanding an increasing and significant economic power, and we need to recognize that. Research suggests that women control more than 20 trillion and should grow to about 30 trillion in this decade in spending power. And I'm sure those figures grossly underestimate their power in the informal and rural economies. And it just really beheaves me that businesses are not mainstreaming gender into their business models enough. We're still operating in a male-dominated capitalist environment. And as Her Majesty pointed out, the agriculture is one of the sectors that we're seeing really not enough progress with the inclusion of women and recognition of the role as economic value makers. So we have to ask ourselves, what's the disconnect? Why don't we get it? Why are businesses leaving value on the table? Why are we not convincing our leaders about the importance of mainstreaming gender equality into our business models? Is it because it's too expensive? Are there social dynamics that we need to address? Are the trade-offs too costly? Many, many questions to answer and unpack. And today we have the opportunity to do that. The benefits, the challenges, and the trade-offs, the how-tos of designing and delivering business models that work for women and for business. And I do hope that we will arrive at some clarity on this during the course of today's event. But it would be interesting, I think, for all of us, again, remembering we are operating under Chatham House rules, let's understand where we all are in this journey towards gender transformative approaches. So I'm going to ask you to reflect on a few questions that you can tell us how we're doing, and we're going to map that out collectively so we can see where we are on the journey. So there is a link on the Zoom chat. It's a very short survey. It shouldn't take you more than 1 or 2 minutes. It's a set of 6 questions. And we would then be able to look in aggregate on our results. So we're going to ask you to quickly answer these questions about your organization. Your answers will be anonymous and will appear on a screen in a moment, together with all the other organizations joining us. Again, this is really for you, so I just ask you to be very introspective and honest about where you stand with regards to those 6 questions, because hopefully by the end of this session, you'll have some tools and be able to see what your peers are doing, and we can begin the process of making change. I'm not sure if we have, it's about done, I'm told. Well, this is very exciting. I'm so happy to see these results. We've got most of you, 73%, 79% in the transformative bucket. Looks like I'm talking to the converted. This is great news. I hope that we can then convert those that are in the unintentional and intentional bucket. So I think we're just about there. So the questions are really designed to help us put you into these 3 buckets. So the gender unintentional, those organizations, and I'd like to recognize you as admitting that you are not taking any steps. And I do hope that in the course of this session, you'll have some reflection and some tools and a better understanding about the importance of gender equality. Those that are in the gender intentional are taking some steps, and that's great. I have to admit that in our own experience at FSD Africa, we are taking those steps. So we have the intention and we are in the process of executing them across our organization and with our colleagues in other FSD programs. And I do hope at some point, well, soon, very soon, we've got very strong leadership that's driving this. We will be completely gender transformative. So those that are gender intentional are taking some steps, and then those that are gender transformative take many steps, working to understand the different needs and constraints of women and men and address the root cause of gender inequality, fostering changes in individual capacities, gendered norms and expectations, and with respect to institutional rules and practices. I'm also delighted to say that within the context of the investments that we make at FSDAI, we are consciously now applying a gender lens, and we are in the process of updating our policies to reflect that, but also in ensuring that it's not just something that's on paper, but it's something that we actually live and breathe and practice. And so it's translated into the investments we make and the people we touch. So there are many aspects of a business model that can indicate our progress towards a gender transformative approach. So an overarching gender strategy, an inclusive approach to our customer consultations, workplace or product tailoring, and how we collect and use gender disaggregated data to inform our decisions. I think it's important that we do recognize that integrating gender into business model is a journey. A journey that unfolds depends on the types and activities undertaken by your organization, your partners, your competitors, and the impact of your organization on the position of women and men. Again, it's important that we remind ourselves this is about gender equity. And so it's important to understand also that it is about leveling the playing field for both women and men and treating them equally. In whatever case you are somewhere on that journey, and advancing requires first understanding where you start. So I hope you found this little exercise useful and reflective for your organizations. If you want to continue with this assessment and dive deeper into where your organization stands and what you can do to bring your organization further on the gender journey, have a look at the My Event platform under the Resources tab for a link to the complete gender tool, as well as many other relevant resources. And I'm sure both CGAP and IDH can provide further resources and guidance on that. Now, with a good sense of where we are collectively, and I'm glad to see that we're all very intentional and transformative, we have come a long way, I must say, from the beginning of my career. And I'm delighted that many organizations have taken this journey seriously. And so we have an opportunity now to speak to two CEOs about their experience with gender transformative approaches, where they sharpen their business model and trade-offs along the way. And we're going to understand why they did it and how they did it. So let's move on to the panel conversation. Thank you. I'd like to first welcome Michael Joseph, who is the current chairman of Kenya Airways, and also chairs the Safari PLC board, the M-Pesa Foundation, and the M-Pesa Foundation Academy. And Michael, you have a tremendous amount of experience on this topic. So welcome and thank you so much for contributing your valuable time and your insights to this. We also have Anne Cairns. Anne, good afternoon or morning. I'm not sure where you are.
I'm in Holland.
Okay, great. Thank you again. Anne is the executive vice chair of Mastercard. And her organization takes gender transformative models very seriously. So thank you very much for being with us as well and for spending the time to share your thoughts.
My pleasure, Anne-Marie, which is my name as well, but I dropped the Marie.
Makes it easier when you fill in forms. We don't have a double barrel. Great. And I'm going to start with you, and then I'm going to turn to you, Michael. Mastercard has been driving gender equality globally. So what has motivated you as a business leader to pursue a more gender transformative business model within Mastercard?
Well, in the business world, it just makes total sense. Why would you recruit from only half the world? If you think about the customers that we're serving, we serve about 3 billion people on the planet with our products and services, but 85% of the day-to-day buying decisions are made by women. So women are very important in our business model. And as we move from shareholder capital to stakeholder capital, then really what we're thinking about is three things. What are we doing in terms of our people? What do we do for our markets? And what's happening with the wider societies that we live in and that we serve? And by actually having a framework to think about gender parity in these three ways, we've done some fantastic things. For example, for our people, we've rolled out global maternity and paternity leave everywhere on the planet. For our markets, we've actually, as I said, we've got 85% of the buying decisions made by women. So there is so much of our product development and technology focused against women. And also in the societies that we serve, we've been very interested in things like financial inclusion. And in financial inclusion, where we pledged to bring 1 billion people into the financial system, we've exceeded 500 million so far. So we're well on track. to achieve that by 2025. And of course, many of those people are women because women are more financially excluded than men. So that's just a flavor of what we're up to.
So there's a recognition that you can't just ignore the 50% of the global population. And secondly, that women command a significant economic power and we can't ignore them.
Completely.
Michael, I'm going to turn to you. So Safaricom's approach has been to ensure that there is gender equity across all of its product lines and processes. So what led you to ensure that that happens?
Thank you, Anne-Marie. I must say that when we started Safaricom, we did not intentionally have a program to have gender equality across everywhere. It was not our intention to do that. It came naturally to us as the years went by in terms of the people that we hired, the people that we served. And so it really wasn't the focus of ours from the very beginning. However, when we became a more mature company, then when we adopted first the Millennium Development Goals and then the Sustainable Development Goals, we then took it on a much stronger view about gender equality. But always Safaricom has always wanted to have products and services that not just are profitable or make money for you, but actually change people's lives for the better. And that's been our modus operandi from the very beginning. And the byproduct of that, of course, is that many of our products and services, particularly our financial services product like M-Pesa, and now lately when we're just introducing DigiFarm, it actually is inclined towards women and helping women to change their lives. Particularly if you look at M-Pesa, the savings and loans product of M-Pesa, the ability to get better credit terms, to buy things on credit, it's sort of naturally evolved towards making women's lives better. But as I say, now it's more, in our part of our goals is to have more gender equality. As an example, we recently developed a product which allowed people to buy a smartphone very cheaply on a sort of pay by the day. And actually, because we recognize that women, there's a gap between ownership of smartphones of about 15 to 16%. And that actually inhibits women from being able to access digital services, data, homeschooling, all these kind of things. And so we have this product now that allows people to buy phones on credit on pay 5 shillings a day kind of thing, which is about 50 cents. And what we have found as well in doing this is that women really appreciate this and actually have less bad debt, 30% less bad debt with women because they know the value of having this smartphone and how it changes their lives. So I think Safaricom has always been this way, but maybe as we grow and become more mature, we focus more on gender equality.
So by virtue of the market that you served, you're saying that you were reaching women. So it was sort of an unintentional consequence of good practices. But now you want to do more, and you're recognizing that there are constraints that women face, and you talked about just basically the digital divide, because that is real, the digital divide within the sector. Besides, giving them access to better phones, do you have a very specific strategy to address this digital divide? No,
not specific strategy for women. No, we don't have as yet. We don't have it. Maybe it's something we need to develop. But it's interesting what we've done. We, as you mentioned, I'm chairman of the M-Pesa Foundation and also of the Academy. And on the Academy, for instance, we are bringing young men and women to the Academy to provide them with a schooling and not just a schooling, an educational system that allow them to be the future leaders of Kenya. And this is bringing people from a very disadvantaged background from across the country. And it's remarkable how the women have risen to the top. You can imagine we are taking girls from very poor backgrounds, from literally straw huts into the Academy. And you just see the girls thrive in this environment. So it's like, you add water to something and it changes it. You're adding, education, gender across the board. It just changes people's lives so much. So I would answer your question, not specifically, it just happens.
Okay, but do you find that you have to make an extra effort to reach those young girls into a profession potentially that they had seen as one for their male counterparts? Is there a need for a very focused strategy to ensure that you have at least 50% enrollment? And I'm delighted to hear they're the ones who do the best. So that will change organically.
Yeah, and not specifically for the young girls. I think where we have a challenge, and I think probably Anne will have a similar challenge. When you recruit women into your organization, when they sort of rise to the top, it's very difficult to keep them there. You know, we tend to see a much higher percentage of loss of senior women leaders in our organization than men. And that is a challenge for us. And I think for all organizations, that as women become more senior in their roles, what's the word I'm looking for? The rate of loss is much higher amongst women and men. And we need to do something about that, providing conditions of work to keep them in the workplace rather than losing that very important skill. And that's something we probably need to do more of.
And how would you respond to that?
Well, I would completely agree with Michael on that, actually. I think that McKinsey published a report a couple of years ago saying that women were actually dropping out or decelerating at the first step on the management ladder, and then the funnel was getting narrower to the top. And I thought this was quite an interesting statistic, and got people to look around my company around the world and said, is that actually happening? And we actually saw it at this level. So we put in a global mentorship program to basically work with hundreds of women across the organization to say what's actually happening at this level and how can we change it. This program's in its second year now. It's got about 1,100 people involved in it. And the interesting thing, I can't tell you that we've seen massive results from it yet because it's early days. But what we have seen is that the women who've been on it are actually getting rated higher in the the performance appraisals than they were in previous years. But of course, because that funnel narrowed, as you get to the top and near the top of companies, the average amount of women in ExCos, the C-suite varies by every country. In the UK, it's about 22%. And we've been trying to increase that figure for quite a while. And of course, if you're in that situation where it's almost 80% men, and CEOs and chairs are realizing that they want to have diversity at the top of their companies, then these women become a bit of a seller's market, if you like. They become attractive to other companies and can move around. And we are actually seeing that in industry. But I think that may be a good consequence, but we would like to be up at a level where that's not happening, that, we have a much more level playing field. At board level, those numbers are different. I'm the global chair of the 30% Club. 30% was created in Britain about 11 years ago when we had about 12% women on boards. Now at the FTSE 100 level, it's heading towards 40%. It's something like almost 38%. That has been easier to change. And the 30% Club is in about 20 countries around the world, from Japan to Colombia and the US and the Middle East and so on. And everybody wants to move forward because basically the business world has recognized that companies that are diverse perform better. So completely agree with what Michael has said there.
But I think there's an unintended consequence of that. And I think we've seen it, and I'm sure Anne has seen it, maybe Anne-Marie has seen it. The unintended consequence of pushing this diversity is that you get people who are not there because they have the skill to be there. They get there because of their gender. And we have to be very careful that because it is demeaning in a way, that if you ask someone to be on your board or in your ExCo just because they're a woman, it means that you have to be careful of doing that. And it must always be skills-based and then focused. And that's, I think I've seen it in my career now, long career in this, is that we need to be.
Well, I mean, the counter argument I would put to that, Michael, though, is that in my career, I've seen many mediocre guys actually get much further up the ladder. So there's a bit of a balance going on here.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm sure we've all seen that. But I just say, just let's work, do it properly. I think I look at Safaricom as an example. At one point, we had almost 50% gender equality at ExCo level. It was very interesting when we did that. Now it's gone down a bit because, as I say, women have left the company for other careers or just left the industry completely. But it's definitely something we should focus on. I think at board level in particular.
No, I don't want to give anyone the wrong impression. I don't think anyone should get into any position about their gender, men or women. I think there are plenty of talented people out there that we can have absolutely the right person for the job in any case.
Yes, I was going to say, I don't think there's an absence of really skilled, talented girls and women in the market. And I think, Michael, you alluded to that in the foundation, to say that the girls are actually moving very high within the organization. So that's testimony to that not really being the problem. Potentially the problem might be
exactly
policies and how they are touched, whether it's within the organization or as customers, consumers, or in rural areas. And if I can shift the conversation a little bit to the external market, and particularly looking at agribusiness, since this was a sector that Her Majesty singled out as a sector where we need to do more. And also just coming back to the question of rural divide, if we're going to get more women who unfortunately tend to be poorer as participants that are benefiting from agriculture, the digital economy is going to be incredibly important. So we do need to address the digital divide. So I'm coming back to that question. And in your organization, do you have any specific strategies to address rural women and this issue of the digital divide?
Absolutely. I mean, we have projects in over 200 countries in the world. So, of course, we have tons in the developing and the developed markets. If we think about digital inclusion, I mean, it's the first step you really need before financial inclusion. We can't be reaching the next billion people on the planet without that. But it's not a simple problem to solve. You can't just suddenly show up in a country, start providing people with technology and expect them to start being able to use it. Even if the connectivity worked, and even if they had the phones that Michael was talking about, and we know there's a gap there already, then actually the knowledge of how to use things, how to conduct business, it has to be shared. And from that point of view, we need training on the ground. And we know that women are much more comfortable if they're actually hearing from people in their own community. We did a project in Kenya called Jazaduka, where we were actually working with Unilever on supply chains. And that wasn't agriculture as much as sort of getting the goods into the shops and getting the shopkeepers to have access to credit. And we were working with banks, a local bank, and now we're working with an international bank with the local bank to help get the credit based on the data that we saw in the shops, and to get the supply chain from Unilever digitized right through to the person who bought the goods in the street. And when we got that right, and we got the credit to the right people so they could order more goods before their shop shelves became empty, then we saw a big uplift, something like 20% uplift in sales. And we're extending those models now into agriculture, where we're looking at farmers, and we're working with Rabobank and Co-op Bank in Kenya to actually provide the ability to farmers to sell directly from their farm to the market without any intermediaries, using things like, simple phones, not necessarily smartphones. But of course, we have to work with the local farming communities to reach something like 3 million farmers in 5 years, and many of these will be women. But we have to educate the women how to do this and how to get the value out of it. And Michael is obviously doing absolutely similar projects, aren't you, Michael?
I would just like to mention two instances of technology and to changing the equation. If I look at M-Pesa, for example, M-Pesa allows people to have control over their finances from their phone. It's simple products, savings and loans, payment of bills. But we did a survey, I think 4 or 5 years ago, and we found that over 200,000 women moved from sustainable, being in the agricultural, to just being workers, to starting their own businesses, actually selling their product, and using M-Pesa as their way to start new businesses, selling the products that they grow on their land. So it was quite a big chunk, 200,000 women actually moving from that. Then I'm also associated with another product called Pula, which is an agricultural insurance product, which allows small-scale farmers to insure their crops against the yield insurance and drought or flood insurance. And we found, interestingly, that if you just offer basic insurance to farmers, 60% of the uptake of that insurance is men. But if you package that with a microcredit facility, then it's 60% is women, because women see microfinancing as an enabler for themselves. And so it's interesting, if we just stayed with just pure insurance, but we didn't couple it with microinsurance or with microfinance, then we would lose that opportunity. And so we've got now I'm just looking at the statistics here, we have 70% of the microinsurance coupled with microfinance with crop insurance, 70% are female. So it just shows how you package the product to your marketplace.
That's really wonderful news. So to both of you, since you've implemented these sort of focus strategies that are bringing more women into your organization or as customers, can you say something about how it's impacted on your bottom line?
Well, I don't know specifically the woman impact on our bottom line. I couldn't tell you that. I mean, I don't know if you could ever have such a statistic, but I would just say providing financial services to the base of the pyramid. I once said in actually the World Bank, I said to the bottom of the pyramid, and I was severely criticized for that. So I don't say now the base of the pyramid, but providing financial service to the base of the pyramid has certainly changed the dynamic for a mobile phone company like Kenya, like Safaricom. 30 to 35% of our revenue comes from just financial services, and probably would be in the next 2 years, maybe get to as much as 50%. How much of that contributes to the bottom line? I'm not so sure.
But it's part of your business strategy.
Very much.
From our point of view, we've seen fantastic growth in our company, over the last, since we IPO'd, we IPO'd at about 5 billion, and our market cap today is probably about 340 billion. So the business has done very well, and that, we've been really accelerating our focus on diversification in the last few years. And one of the things that I think is we're a big flow business. So the more people that we bring into the financial system, the more connectivity we generate around the world, the more people we reach with our products, the more successful the business. And women have been underserved. So in that sense, they've been a white space for the business, somewhere to really focus and grow. And I was sharing with Michael in the panel earlier on today that with my other hat, I'm chair of Financial Alliance for Women, which is a peer-to-peer learning network connecting many banks around the world. And we have been focusing on fintechs recently. And we thought the fintechs, through their digital technology, would be addressing the women's market much more than the traditional banks. But what we saw was that the fintechs had 3 times the gender gap of a traditional bank. So traditional bank had a gender gap of about 9% men and women between their customer base, fintech over 27%. So actually one of my comments was, the new technology and the players in the new technology don't realize how much of the world's economy they're missing by missing the women's market. And that's something that I hope, everybody listening on this call will think about, because, listening to Michael and I, it's driving our business models to actually be playing in that market.
But I would like to say, and if you would allow me, Anne-Marie, sorry, if you allow me, when we talk about agriculture or technology in agriculture, if I could just say this, it's very easy to say we are being successful with technology in agriculture when we just look at the inputs. It's easy to provide inputs. You can give credit credit, and then you can buy the inputs either digitally or in an old-fashioned way. And then you can buy the outputs also in a similar way. You can buy the crops, pay them via M-Pesa. But when you put the whole package together, from inputs all the way through, from inputs to credit to inputs to growing to buying the crop and refunding the farmers, that is a very different animal. And it's not been successful yet. I believe we're getting there, and DigiFarm is one of those products where we're trying to get there. But if I look at it, and I think Queen Máxima mentioned that earlier today when she talked about scale, we are not there yet in terms of measuring success with using technology in agriculture to change people's lives for the better, when we only have, not less than 1 million farmers on our systems. In Kenya, just with DigiFarm, we perhaps have 150,000 farmers, but I believe when we get to 500,000 farmers, active farmers in the whole, this from end to end, then I believe we can say we're successful. And we have a long way to go still. And the difficulties are well known. It's access to finance, access to the funding, buying the crop from the farmer at market-related prices, and making sure that they get paid back, properly and quickly. It's a big challenge, and I think if we can crack this, we will change the lives of small-scale farmers forever.
Thank you very much, both, and I'll give you, if you mind, Michael, the last word, and then I think we can close. I'd love to have this discussion. We could go on forever. It's a really interesting topic, Anne, but please have the last word.
Thank you. One of the things that I wanted to say, and it came up in our discussion earlier today, was that our research from women consumers everywhere in the world shows that women are thinking much more about where a product was sourced, how sustainable it is, how much it's impacting climate change, and so on. So if we can eliminate the middle between the women who are producing the farming, the goods, the food, etc., and the women who are buying, by using information, data, technology to actually get that supply chain as simple as it possibly can be, not just 500,000, Michael, billions of transactions and people and not billions of farmers, but millions of farmers could be affected in a very positive way. And I think we have to be thinking about this now as we move into an environment where we're all going to collectively have to tackle climate change, because these decisions will be very important in the future.
And the women play a very important role in that space, particularly in agriculture. Thank you very much, both of you. I wish we had a lot more time for this conversation, but this has been very inspiring. And I think the panelists, there's been lots of questions. I'm sorry we haven't had a chance to go to them, but hopefully we can continue the conversation at some point. Thank you both for joining us, taking the time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Anne-Marie.
Great, so let's move on. We are going to go to some fire chats. I hope you all found this conversation good food for thought. Really excited to hear what Mastercard and Safaricom are doing unintentionally, but with good consequences, and intentionally, and achieving great results. So building on these candid reflections, I would like to hear from more of the business leaders with us today. And so we're going to engage with you in smaller groups. These will be really personal and interactive conversations with a moderator. And so we're really wanting to gain further insights on the why, the how, and what are the challenges. So we have 8 fire chats across 5 different topics. So we have those listed up. So the topics are customers, innovation and solutions, employees, partners, and capital, unlocking access to capital. So we will have actually 25 minutes. Sorry, I gave our CEOs 5 minutes extra, so I'm going to have to take it away from you. I apologize for that, but I think you can agree they were very inspiring.